Hi, I'm Chris Adamo from Balloons Online in Sydney, Australia. Today we're going to do a little quick demonstration on how I create my balloon clouds. I use a QuickLink understructure to build off that to build the clouds. The reason being, you can do it a couple of ways. Probably the most common would be the garland method, where you have lines of garland all tied in together. I found the issue with that was it would buckle. So you'd be adding mass and it'd end up buckling a high and low. So you'd have to use a lot of stock to then build out. When we use a QuickLink sheet with the X-Grid, it keeps it really flat and it allows less stock, because we don't have to build as high. The other benefit as well is it has some structure, some integrity to itself. So we need less rigging points. We can have a rigging point here and it can kind of balance and like leverage or lever itself out without it buckling or bowing too much. If we have those knots really tight and we build it a certain way, you can build a giant cloud and only rig it with, say, four points, no framing. So today I'm just going to show you a method using 6-inch links because it's a little bit easier to fit in the camera angle. But of course you can scale it up with 12-inch links. So firstly, we've just got our precision air. I've set it to 0.5 on this unit, but 5.5 inches. I always underinflate a tad. It just makes it stronger, less chance of popping, less chance of going faulty. We're tying the knots really tight. So if the balloons are a little smaller, then they're a little bit more malleable to accept that compression. So really tight knots. That's just the main tip. Like pull it over very far over there on that angle there, and tie your knots so that there's very little stretch. I'll show you again. So working the neck of the balloon, right, pulling it in as much as you can without tearing the balloon. Okay. Same again with the nibs. Pull it up. I seem to wrap it twice. The reason being, there's less chance of the balloon sort of pulling back, like stretching back on itself before I actually tie that knot. This has a lot more friction that'll hold it in place before tying the knot. So here's one I prepared earlier. So what we're doing is we're creating X grids, like an X pattern. Now to do that, of course, is you have chains of links, preferably in even quantities of 4, because you need 4 to create an X. So that might not be even, I haven't counted it, we'll find out. So I just, doesn't matter how long the chain is, I don't really count it, I just hold it up and look down. So I can see that that's halfway now. And then start twisting my X's in 4s. So you just count 2 on each side, a couple of twists, 2 on each side, and there we go, it's an even number of 4. And then you just tie the ends. Once again, tying that knot as tight as possible. Okay, so now this is what I call a ribbon, okay? When you've got 2 chains that are in an X form, it's a nice flat ribbon. So to keep it flat, the first thing I want to do as I'm working with these ribbons is I'll add my pairs to the junctions, okay? Now the pairs in this case, I'm using 5-inch balloons, a couple of 11-inch balloons. So the first thing I'm doing is I will have them pre-inflated, just easy to work with them pre-inflated, but the same size really on the PA. However, now we're going to vary it because we're talking about an organic shape, all right? A cloud is organic, there's no real clean-cut lines, there's no symmetry. We want a texture that is variable, okay? So just deflate a little bit here and there. I really don't give it much thought. Once again, the knots of those pairs really tight, because we just want to push everything, like pull it all together so it has rigidity. So I'm not even looking, okay? Just let a little bit of air out on both sides. Bring it in, twist it around once, and it just holds that junction in and flattens the ribbon, okay? Now sometimes when you're working, there's going to be an upside and a downside. The upside, if it's not going to be visual, I keep that all of my small balloons, just say I'm working with 12-inch links. I'll have 11-inch up, okay, because they're more affordable. And I'll just have a consistent size. I'm not worried about that. But all my 3-foots and my 16-inch are going to be below, okay? So in this case, this is going to be a small piece, say, over a table centerpiece as a cloud for whatever. It can hang like this. So above and below are going to be visual, and you just got to keep that in mind, what kind of detail you're going to put where. So here's some little pairs I prepared earlier. Just pop them into the gaps. Now it's really important the size of the 5-inch can't be smaller than the size of that gap. Because when there's junctions and there's gaps, when we're filling a gap, of course it can pop out because we're not wrapping around anything. Okay, so I fill all the gaps once, and they're not actually going to stay there. I'll show you why. Here's another ribbon. Now, thinking about the shape of the cloud, okay, we can vary it any which way we want. And it's important to know at this point from a design perspective that we're going to be filling organics out of the edges of this cloud, okay? So this isn't the finished shape. It's usually about 30% smaller, what we do here. So I've got another ribbon as well. We can kind of play around with that. Let's do this one. I like that idea. And as I said before, let's fill the junctions, and that'll make it flat. I'll move our PA to the side a little bit. Okay, so now let's do this, okay? It's just going to be off center. It'll allow for us to have some curvature around the corners. But what I've done is I've filled these gaps. So the reason why I do that first is I pull one ribbon up to another ribbon, and I just push what I've filled in that gap over to the next gap. And now I've wrapped it around a new junction. Once again, this is like pre-loaded, all right? Push it through, one twist, and back to the gap, and now we're locked in, okay? So from this point on, we're just gonna start continuing to fill all of the gaps. Bearing in mind, here's a little balloon I've had for detail. I think that's actually a little bit too small. I'm not going to leave that in that junction, okay? So we'll just inflate some more stock. Now, all of our junctions and all of our gaps are filled, all right? Now, you're probably wondering, well, that doesn't look like a cloud, because it doesn't. It's more like a quick link wall. So now we need to start filling the edges. And the last thing we're going to do is add our organic clusters, okay? We need to break the matrix of these up and down X grids. So we'll start with the edges. Just push those junctions to the edges. You can twist it if you wish. Okay? And it still doesn't look like a cloud, but that's fine. We'll start just working here. We're going to keep adding to the junctions. And once we've filled it completely, then I'm going to start adding pairs. This is where the magic happens, over an existing single balloon, okay? That's tied in on a junction. I'm going to push that pair down and wrap it around. So I've created a little cluster of 3. So as soon as we start, and this is where I use the smaller, more detailed balloons. So if you're using 11-inch balloons, like 12-inch lengths, this is where an 11-inch balloon inflated to say 8-inch or so will start to come in effect. And I would also be adding my 3-foots and my 16-inch and just really varying the size of the balloons around here. But because you can't use smaller balloons in the gap, this is where the detail can be added. And as I work, you'll see I might start to add a few of the larger balloons. In this case, an 11-inch just inflated to 7, 8, 6-inch. I might actually put that in a junction. Okay? Okay, I'll show you one more thing right here. Here we have one of the sharp edges, right, a 90-degree angle from the quick links. There's 2 things you can do in this case. One is you can get a pair, push it in on that angle, and grab the neck of the pair, and just tie it back to anything that's close. Okay? The other thing you can do, and let's look at this angle here, is you can tie an extra quick link, where we can find one. You can tie an extra quick link to bridge that gap, and that'll soften the edge and gives us 2 extra junctions. One little thing about inflating, these are 11-inch that we're inflating to 7 or so inch, is if you want the white color to be true, you really need to stretch or push that latex. So I'll show you. So here we go. We don't get 9-inch balloons in Australia, so we have to use 11-inch and just push that color out, especially for a gold or a silver. And see, I'm kind of holding a lot of that, the meat of the latex, as I then wrap it around. So that's a big section of the latex itself. I'm gonna tie that off, and then you can push the white of the colour out. All right, so we're nearly finished. The last thing that you just need to keep working your way around is making sure that you can't see any of your mechanics, all right, so they're knots. So you just need to keep filling until there's enough compression to build a module around that. Also, I can see there's 2 quick links here, right, in this chain. I need to keep building out around this point. Any gaps that you got to kind of work around. Here's a single pair. You need at least 4. You need at least a quad on every external junction, and pretty much most internal junctions as well. You see how thin that is, and how just by holding it once, with one point of reference, so that could be one rigging point, the thing has integrity, all right? It holds, it's not really buckling. Obviously, the bigger it is, and if you're using heavier balloons, it's gonna weigh it down, it's gonna buckle in some points. But that's really difficult to get when you're adding individual garlands or individual columns side by side. So look, I really hope that you've enjoyed the tip. Feel free to ask any questions that you might have, and what I'd love to see is some examples of you trying this method. Have a great day.